The NHL trade deadline has come and gone, and the playoff race is now officially in full swing. Teams like the Vegas Golden Knights, Carolina Hurricanes, and Colorado Avalanche getting all of the love and being declared the winners of the trade deadline. And it's easy to understand why, because all of those teams got players who were at the top end of the players who were available at the deadline, but in my opinion, none of them deserve to be named winners of the trade deadline. When looking at the value that these teams gave up to get those players, it turns out that in a lot of cases, they barely broke even, and in some cases, even lost out on value. Now, you could say that that makes sense for those teams because they're making a push for the Stanley Cup, and any player they add who can help their odds of lifting Lord Stanley's Cup is worth it regardless of the price they might have to pay down the line. But in my opinion, the best run organizations are the ones that, yes, will push in all their chips to make an aggressive move, but make sure that they are keeping their future intact by not giving up too much value down the line. Similarly, teams who sell off good players at the deadline for pennies on the dollar are not really helping their cause, because yes, you could add a pick or a prospect at the deadline, but is that price worth it to sacrifice a player who can help young players grow and develop and learn how to win? So with that in mind, here are three teams who I think got the most value out of the trade deadline, the teams that I would consider winners that nobody's talking about. And the first team that I have on my list is the Winnipeg Jets, who were buyers at the deadline, making three big deals that I think were all absolutely tremendous value. Of course, they kicked it off by trading for Sean Monahan from the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for a first-round pick and a third-round pick in 2027. Monahan's been a really strong two-way forward who fits into the middle six, and right now is getting slotted alongside their young budding winger Alex Iafallo. Then the Jets made a couple of deals with the Devil that didn't end up costing them their soul. They got Tyler Toffoli in exchange for a third and a second-round pick in next year's draft, and then Colin Miller from the Devils in exchange for a 2026 fourth-round pick. Now, Miller at this stage of his career is basically a bottom pairing / depth defenseman, but giving up a fourth-round pick in 2 years' time is basically nothing, so all Colin Miller has to do is be a respectable bottom-pairing defenseman, which is basically what he was in New Jersey this year. But getting Tyler Toffoli, a guy with 26 goals and 44 points on the year, for just a couple of mid-round picks is exceptional value by the Winnipeg Jets. He's a guy who can easily slot onto the top six, play on the power play if you need him to. So I really like all three trades from the Winnipeg Jets perspective. I think they came out on top in terms of the value exchanged in all three of them. The only major sacrifice of their future they made was a first-round pick next year, but I applaud them for making the all-in push this year, but still maintaining enough assets that they can build on this in coming years as well. Now, the second team that I think absolutely killed it at the 2024 trade deadline is the Nashville Predators. As opposed to the Jets, who had a couple of knockout blows, the Predators really killed the trade deadline with a death by 1,000 cuts type of approach. They made 4 different trades, of which I think they came out on top in 3 of them, and we'll start off with the one that I think that they got fleeced, quote-unquote, in, which is the Anthony Beauvillier trade, where they gave up a 5th-round pick to Chicago in exchange for the forward. At this point, at age 26, Beauvillier is more of a name than a productive player. He has only 2 goals and 6 points in 25 games this year, so the Preds are really banking on a resurgence by Beauvillier in a new environment, which I suppose could happen, and a 5th-round pick isn't that much to give up for him, so it's a loss in terms of absolute pure value, but it's a trade that makes sense to me. But where Nashville won is in the other trade, starting with their trade of Yakov Trenin to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for prospect defenseman Jeremy Hansel and a 3rd-round pick in 2025. Trenin is currently slotted in as a middle six forward for the Avalanche, which sounds like a good value trade for them, but Trenin only has 10 goals and 14 points on the year. He's never scored more than 25 points in a season, and he's also never been a positive Corsi player. Even though Jeremy Hansel is not a prize prospect and the 3rd-round pick isn't until next year's draft, I still think that's pretty good value to give up for a guy who has a pretty low ceiling. Then they made a swap that I really liked with Philadelphia, sending Denis Gurianov to the Flyers in exchange for Wade Allison. Allison is only 25 years old, he has 9 goals and 15 points in his first full season as an NHLer, while Gurianov, who admittedly is only a year older at age 26, has only peaked at 20 goals and 30 points in his best year. So yes, in terms of age, they're about the same in their development curve, but with Wade Allison's limited NHL experience, I think it's fair to Wade Allison eclipsing what Denis Gurianov has already done in his pretty lengthy NHL career, even at the young age of 26. And then finally, my favorite trade that they made was swapping a 6th-round pick to Phoenix in exchange for Jason Zucker. Zucker is one of those wily veterans who can add some more jams to a team that desperately needs it. Nashville is currently holding on to the number 1 wildcard spot out west. He's not the same effective player he was when he was on Minnesota or Pittsburgh, but he's still a guy who can log second-line minutes, play on the power play, and give you some solid production in the playoffs. And finally, the team that I think won the trade deadline by the largest margin was actually a team who did the right thing by their organization and sold, which is the Calgary Flames. And the Flames really were the ones who kicked off the trade deadline by flipping Elias Lindholm to the Vancouver Canucks in that gargantuan package that I broke down when it happened. And I said it then, and I will reiterate it now, that was an absolute fleecing by Calgary, giving up a pretty good second-line center in Elias Lindholm to get back an NHL player, 2 prospects, a 1st and a 4th-round pick is just an absurd overpay by Vancouver. Through 17 games, Elias Lindholm has 4 goals and 7 points, while Andrei Kuzmenko, since being traded, has 5 goals and 8 points in 13 games. Interesting. Oh, and Kuzmenko also has a 58.9 Corsi 4 to Lindholm's 51.3. While playing on a better team. That guy was so bad that you had to give up a 1st-round pick, a 4th-round pick, and 2 prospects to get rid of him in order to get back a good, not great, second-line center. Truly playing 5D chess there, Vancouver. But the Flames also unloaded Noah Hanifin and Chris Tanev, getting back respectable returns. Not great returns, but respectable for both of them. For Tanev, they got back prospect Artem Grushnikov, along with a 2024 second and a 2026 conditional 3rd. In my opinion, that was a bit of an underpay by the Dallas Stars. It was good value for them. But the Noah Hanifin trade was really good value for the Flames in exchange for a 1st-round pick, defensive prospect Daniil Miramonov, and a conditional 3rd-round pick going to Cal. All in all, yeah, it hurts to lose your stud young defenseman in Hanifin, but in terms of what you could get back for him, the value was pretty good. So between those 2 decent trades and the absolute fleecing they got over on Vancouver, the Flames are the team who won the 2024 NHL deadline, in my opinion. They came away with 2 first-round picks, a 2nd and a 3rd, and multiple prospects, so they're going to have 6 picks in the top 3 rounds of the 2024 NHL draft, depending on whether the conditions of the trade are met.